welcome. I'm Carrie Oderman, and you're watching Head to Head. Several thousand anti-government protesters took to the streets of the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, as tensions rose between Moscow and its ex-Soviet neighbor. Clashes erupted after a Russian MP, who openly supports separatists in Georgia, addressed the Georgian Parliament in Russian. Georgians consider Russia to be an invader, which finances the self-proclaimed republics of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. We're here today with political expert Oleksiy Poltorakov to discuss these developments and where they may lead. Thank you very much for being here today. Now, before we discuss this, we have some footage from yesterday in Tbilisi.
Political Union, Georgia Dream, Democratic Georgia initiated a large-scale political reform initiative. The 2020 parliamentary elections will be conducted by proportional system and under zero, repeat, under zero threshold.
So today we saw that one of the demands was met. We see that the power of people is greater than people in power. So we're here to ask louder. We're here to make them respond. We're here to make them hear us, make the society talk and listen to their society.
Are we at a flashpoint in Georgian history where people will look back to these protests and say that started something? They're changing the election system.
No,
what can we expect next?
I would say we shouldn't overestimate both the situation in Georgia and the Russian factor involved. The protest begins with not a full-scale interstate crisis, but with some, let's say, blunders of the Russian representative who took the seat of the chairman of the parliament, who started to speak Russian in Georgia, which provokes rather internal tensions and social reaction. But the background of the conflict, which transfers to the, let's say, to riots from the official point of view, is the internal interpartial, intercoalition crisis, the crisis between the party in power and between the parties on opposition. The conflict combines economic and political elements. From the point of view of party in power, represented by this way or another pro-Russian forces, the economic development prevails as far as we have the high level of unemployment in Georgia, the high inflation rate, etc., etc., etc. Within this framework, there is a need from the point of view of party in power to lower the tension between Russia and Georgia and vice versa. There was an idea, or background idea, to invite Russian people's deputies from Russian Duma to Georgia to speak, to have informal consultation, internal discussion. But from the point of view of parties in opposition, actually we don't have a combined opposition, an integrated opposition in Georgia. They feel that politics prevail. Approximately 10 years ago, we have an experience, a crisis with Russian occupation of the part of Georgia, I mean in Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia, but it took 10 years ago. And after that, there was a breakthrough in relation. The visa regime was implemented. Now on the agenda, before the escalation, what the idea to get back, to make steps back toward a visa-free regime within this Commonwealth of Independent State, visa-free regime within rather international initiative regime. But with the escalation, there is no idea for now for negotiation on this issue. The capstone idea is how to organize the parliamentary election, whether they will be on time next year or whether they will be maybe this autumn, like the situation we have in Ukraine. You can make some parallels to that.
In Tbilisi next month, there's an EU conference that's being planned. Tbilisi and Georgia are very focused towards the West. Some watchful eyes might argue that this happened at the perfect point to interrupt that meeting plan for next month with the EU. Your opinion on this?
Well, it's difficult to say in a few words. Now we have for now we have internal crisis, and international community, namely European representative, the representative of NATO and other Western countries, now they didn't make any serious statements except that they prevent uprising of conflict, to stop political overuse of force, and to deal within the negotiation way, and then we'll see.
The strong reaction of the protesters, might that not be just opening a door up for Putin? In the past, Vladimir Putin has said that he will keep the citizens of Russia safe when they're abroad. This was one of the justifications he used for the annexation of Crimea. What will happen?
I tend to think it's rather a tactical step of Putin, because it happened right in the middle of tourist season in Georgia, and Russian tourists are one of the main channels for Georgia to obtain currency, for financial support, and so on. As far as we have a deep and long history of trade wars between Georgia and Russia. I mean, wine war, that Georgian wine was named some poison, and so on. So we'll see. With this step, Russia, Kremlin showed that it is ready for escalation, the relations. While now, if the ball is on Georgian side, what strategy to choose? To escalate the situation on its way, or try to propose some alternative initiative, for instance, to discuss visa-free regime in possibility, or something else. But now we have a kind of a lack of power in Georgia. Now on the agenda, the firing the Minister of Internal, maybe the security service head, and the head of the parliament is already signed his going away, despite the fact that during the crisis in the parliament he was absent. But he was a kind of a hostage of the escalation.
There are commonalities between the situation in Ukraine and the situation in Georgia. 20% of Georgia's internationally recognized territory is under Russian occupation. Is there anything that we can learn from what's happening in Georgia right now that President Zelensky and Ukrainian parliamentarians can gather more information?
Well, it's a technically it's that 20% of Georgian territory belongs to self-proclaimed Abkhazia and Ossetia, with its special relations with Russia. We all know that all those territories are controlled de facto by Russian forces, but the Jura, they are independent, semi-independent, quasi-independent states. You could parallel this situation with DNR and LNR, but not with Crimea. Crimea, with the fact of direct occupation, Crimea is fixed in the Russian constitution.
Do you think that eventually that Ossetia and Abkhazia could also be brought into the Russian constitution?
No, Russia doesn't have a special interest in it. It's a part of geopolitical trade between Georgia and Russia. Russia could use it in trading negotiations, in exchange. For instance, international experts said that Russia could give everything is wanted by West in exchange for Crimea, if there is a possibility to fix internationally that Crimea belongs to Russia and it needed to withdraw, Russia withdraw from Abkhazia and Ossetia, as well as Donbass, Syria, etc., etc. Russia is ready for that, but the international community is not.
According to the Georgian president, speaking to BBC, when asked about how violent the protests became last night and the night before. She had said that it was a spontaneous protest from the public.
From the very beginning, it was spontaneous because the public opinion was upset of Russian political hawk who voted for Abkhazia and Ossetia to sit in the speaker's chair and making statements in Russia. Moreover, despite the event was under Orthodox religious framework, the representative of parliament was a representative from the Communist Party of Russia, which sounds a bit strange on Orthodox issues.
Let's go back to that so people understand the context. It was actually a meeting of Orthodox parliamentarians from over 20 countries, and had been in planning for about 2 years, according to media reports. So
the idea was that the chairman of the meeting was a representative of Greece, the motherland of Orthodox religion. But something happened. The Greece representative was absent, and his deputy Russian representative of Russia was needed to lead the procedure for at least formal opening of the event. But according, not exactly for protocol, you can take it as a kind of a blunder. He used the chair of the parliament, head of the speaker of the parliament, which was rather quite a symbolical step for Georgia. Not for Russia, it was a technical, maybe some technical blunder. He is not a diplomat highly trained in protocol issues. But after media cover showed this, it was a kind of rather of trigger of relation between party in power and opposition forces. The opposition effectively used this picture, this incident, this blunder to start a social protest, which now it brings for elections.
So to summarize, it was perhaps a blunder. It's a cautiously optimistic.
Technically, it was, but it was this blunder was used as a trigger for the escalation of internal political situation, which provokes external international tension between Georgia and Russia, and possibly in other dimensions. For example, when was the beginning of the speech of that Russian diplomat, the representative of Ukrainian embassy, Mr. Igor Dolgov, the ambassador of Ukraine in Georgia, left the meeting. It was a kind of quite effective démarche.
Well, thank you very, very much for the information. We'll be watchful eyes. We'll be on Tbilisi. That was Oleksiy Poltorakov, political expert. Thank you very much for watching the program, and stay tuned for more with UATV.